if you're now thinking there ought to be a law, well, there is. There's a whole body of law that makes all of this legal. So how did a system like this ever become the law? To answer that, we go back to England in the mid-17th century. With the development of better ships and the new explorations they allowed, trade was expanding rapidly. In order to carry out commerce, especially over great distances and lengths of time, written contracts were becoming more and more important and more sophisticated. Under English common law, it had long been established that a contract could only be enforced if something of real substance had changed hands. A transfer of goods or rights in property was the real stuff of the exchange, and that was what the court would evaluate for fairness, not just the words on the document. A contract under which there had been no exchange of consideration, meaning real goods or rights in property, was deemed to be empty and was therefore not enforceable by the court. So, a contract in which a borrower, say, pledged a car he does not own in exchange for a bank's promise of payment would not even qualify as a contract. No common law court would enforce it. As well, in the event of a dispute over a contract, under common law, only someone who had actually provided consideration to the transaction, in other words, only someone who delivered the goods, had the right to sue in court for fulfillment of the contract by the other party. This right was not transferable to a third party. When early traders went off personally on expeditions with trade goods, they bought those goods at home with their local currency and would sell them for foreign currency in the distant destination. They would then buy foreign goods with the foreign money, bring those goods home, and sell them for their local currency. Pretty simple. But as trade became more sophisticated, traders became more inclined to stay home and just hire ships to carry out deliveries. This gave traders the freedom to import cargoes of foreign goods from different sources than the destination to which their home goods had been exported. Thus, a problem was created. The exported goods had been paid for with foreign coin, the value of which needed to be spent somewhere else. Moving money as coins entailed a high risk of theft, as well as the near certainty of partial loss by currency conversion in a different land. This problem of payments from a distance was overcome by the use of bills of exchange. A bill of exchange was a signed order from the payer to an addressee demanding that the addressee pay a certain specified sum of money to the person identified as the payee. These were secured by signature, and they could not be acted upon in court by anyone other than the original parties. Thus they were of no use to a thief or any other third party. You probably recognize that these were the precursors of checks. I, the payer, instruct the bank, the addressee, to pay the payee, a person named on the check, a certain sum of money. This was all well and good for transactions among parties who were known to each other. The bill of exchange was used merely as a way to order payment in coin at a distant location. But merchants soon wanted more flexibility. They wanted to be able to use bills of exchange to reconcile payments amongst many merchants in many locations, using bills of exchange like money itself. For this to work, bills of exchange had to be assignable to and enforceable by third parties. As we shall see, this was the moment in legal history that gave sanction to the banking system we have today. A third party, who might have honestly purchased a bill of exchange several steps removed from the original exchange, could not be expected, nor would he have the right, to show up in a common law court and defend the validity of the contract and collect on it. This made third-party bills of exchange an unacceptable risk. So, in order to be able to use bills of exchange as a convenient and guaranteed third-party payment system, essentially equivalent to money, the common law practice had to be set aside regarding bills of exchange. In England, by a series of legal decisions from 1664 to 1699, this problem for commerce was remedied by making bills of exchange enforceable by third parties. If a third party had purchased a bill for valuable consideration and in good faith, having no apparent reason to suspect fraud or some deficiency in the right of the seller to sell it, then the bill automatically became good and enforceable by the court against the signer. What did this change mean? It meant, essentially, that any bill of exchange would be considered legitimate once it was sold. Bills of exchange and all other subsequent types of signed promises to pay, with the notable exception of checks, became transferable and enforceable in court, just what the merchants wanted. Now debt contracts could be sold like things, and transacting business would be a whole lot easier. Not only that, it opened up a whole new market for profit seekers, trading in bills of exchange themselves. The marketing of debt was born. The change in the law had another effect as well. It made it possible to trick or even force a person into signing a legally binding promise to pay, and then, if that promise were purchased by a third party for real consideration and in good faith, it would be enforceable against the signer in court. Ultimately, this became one of the foundational principles of the Uniform Commercial Code, which governs the conduct of business in the United States, and by extension, in most of the world. Think about it. If we buy a stolen laptop from a guy on the street, we're guilty of receiving stolen goods, a criminal offense. Doesn't matter if we paid honest money and were unaware the goods were stolen. The court will restore the goods to the rightful owner. We, as purchasers, innocent or not, lose our money and may even be charged with a crime. But if we buy a loan contract from a banker and give him real value for it in good faith, it doesn't matter that the loan contract may have come into existence under false pretenses. Whoever signed it is required by commercial contract law to pay up, and the courts will enforce the obligation. Today, debt contracts come in a myriad of forms, including and especially loans and mortgages. It's significant to note that just as these common law restrictions were being removed, the brand new Bank of England was being established. The first bank state-authorized to create money out of thin air. The new laws fit in perfectly, making the new bank's empty contracts enforceable against the so-called borrower. Those who have discovered the true nature of their own bank loans and have attempted to challenge the validity of their debt contracts in modern courts have discovered to their dismay that this commercial contract law is still the bedrock defense of money as debt. The bank will have sold the original loan agreement to a third party for value, and even though that third party is often just a sister company of the bank, all that matters to the judge is who possesses the document, what it says, and whose signature is on it. The bank's failure to inform the borrower about the true nature of the loan contract and the absence of any actual money loaned on the bank's part is not relevant.